Guys, it's Brooke. If you wouldn't mind, before we start, please subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, like, comment, and most importantly, share the video so that everybody else can find it too. So now that we've taken care of that, on to the video. Vintage Gardener, welcome back to my channel. So that live podcast did not go how I thought it was going to go. So I do want to apologize for that because I know there's some live footage on YouTube that does nothing except for like troubleshooting, and so you guys are probably wondering what on earth is going on. So Jen and I tested out that platform twice, Wednesday and Thursday night. The first night, the stereo worked fine. We realized that we could actually stream it live to YouTube. I was able to do it successfully the first time. Jen had an issue with her computer. She had to get a new computer. So the next night we tried it on Thursday, went fine. It was more than fine. I mean, we didn't have any glitches. Like, everything was smooth. Connection, like, it was perfect. It was probably, I mean, I've never, testing out equipment, like, usually there's something that goes wrong. Nothing went wrong. And so, because of how smoothly everything went, I was flabbergasted. When all of a sudden, we started and everything seemed to be going good. And all of a sudden somebody was like, hey, I can't get on. Or, I got a text message from my coworker going, what's going on? And then stereo.com crashed and it's like, well, it's not available. And I'm going, whoa, what's going on? I know at one point, I think Jen kind of got kicked off the podcast. And I did notice that it kept cycling through a lot of people to match me up with somebody, because stereo.com does not allow you to do a live podcast by yourself. You always have to have a co-host. And so I was like kicking people out going, hey, listen, I'm in the middle of doing a podcast with somebody. No, this is scheduled. And so I was like just throwing people out. I felt kind of bad because the other person was like, what? And so we eventually switched over. I did notice though, right before we switched over to Instagram Live, that when I stopped streaming to YouTube, my sister did say that I wasn't cutting in and out. They could hear me. I could be heard smoothly. So that was very confusing to me. And I started thinking about it, and then, I'm fairly tech savvy, and this is not my first go around with having like a blog, that sort of thing. Back in 2007, I had a book review blog with podcast. And so that was like, before social influencing was a thing. And, people were increasingly turning to blogs to get products reviewed. And so I remembered that with my book review blog, I used to do podcast interviews with authors. And I remember that one time I did post a controversial interview that people were like up in arms about. People were mad at this author. And I remember when I posted it, I remember that a couple thousand, I don't even remember how many people actually ended up going to my page over the next few days. But what I do remember is that it shut my website down, and that people were trying to, people that I was friends with were saying, hey, I can't get onto your website. Like, it wasn't even loading correctly. And I knew from going to, because I was hosting on iWeb, and I knew from going to another person who had an iWeb site that it wasn't my domain. It wasn't the host. It was just, but when I think I pulled my stat counter, I realized that like 2,000 people, like 2,000 plus people were on it. And although, I had a decent enough bandwidth, it was just not, it was not conducive to having over 2,000 people on one specific page, all trying to listen to the exact same podcast. And the podcast was like an hour. And so when I started thinking about it, I was like, the fact that it was unavailable, kind of how glitchy it was, and that sort of thing, did seem like a bandwidth issue. That's kind of what it was reminding me of. And I do remember that Studio.com does have contest to see who has the most listeners. But I don't know, when I was reading about it, I got the impression, I thought it was like a rolling contest. It was constantly going. It was kind of like, like how on YouTube, where if you get a certain amount of subscribers, it kind of unlocks the next level thing and that sort of thing. That's the way I thought this whole contest was. I knew there was a grand prize, and if you guys were on the Instagram live, you probably towards the end, like right before we ended, heard me say, I wonder if they were running a contest. And so after the live was over, I signed back into Stereo.com, and the first thing that comes up was a pop-up going, oh, the contest ends in 2 days and the grand prize is $100,000. And I did kind of look at the rules, and the rules were like the podcast could only be like 30 minutes long, and there were some other things. And so I think the contest started when we were starting our blog, our podcast. And so basically everybody was rushing to start a podcast. And then of course people were trying to get as many listeners. And I do know from the leaderboard that I saw that I know somebody had well over 2,000, listeners to their podcast. And so, if you have a lot of people, especially if the, Stereo.com doesn't have like unlimited bandwidth, if you have a lot of people signing on, that's what happens. It'll shut your website down. So that's pretty much what happened, is that we started our podcast at the wrong time. When I signed in, it was like 9 o'clock. I think most of the podcasts that had started had already been over. So probably if we had started the podcast later on in the evening, like, 7 or 8, we would have missed the whole rush and missed the website crashing, and things probably would have gone a lot more smoothly. So where do I go from here? So am I going to do another live podcast again? I am. Because that is something that I wanted to do. If you've been following my YouTube channel, if you've been following my actual podcast, you'll know that I've been saying I wanted to do question and answer sessions. I did want to be able to have like people from, the flower industry, be they botanists or growers or that sort of thing. So, and, interview them and be able to have a resource available for people to like ask questions, things that like, I don't know if I could get a rosarian, like ask all your rose questions too. So I definitely want to do that. Now, am I going to do it on Stereo.com? Probably not. So I did start looking for another podcast hosting, especially because the hosting I'm hosting it on WordPress, and that renews every June. And so I could go to another, since it's ending, I can go to another platform to have them host it. And so I went to Podbean. That's been around for a while. As a matter of fact, when I first started blogging, I know people were doing, they're hosting their podcasts on Podbean. At the time, I don't think it was a free platform. Like now they have like a number of tiers. Back then, from what I remember, is like if you had a podcast, you had to pay for it. And I don't recall it being something like a reasonable amount. For what I remember, it was fairly, expensive, which is why I just used Apple's iWeb software and thing to do my podcast. So they have like unlimited bandwidth. So basically one of the things was like, yeah, you can have a live podcast. You can have as many people as you want on your, listening, and it's not going to crash. And so I'm like, good. So there's a lot, it definitely has a lot more bells and whistles. This one does have a call in. You can call in. That's what I got to test, because I don't know if it's a number people can actually just dial into, or that sort of thing. The other nice thing about it is that, number one, I can do a live podcast by myself. Stereo.com, one disadvantage is that if I wanted to do, like, for example, let's say if I, you know, like I'm going to do another video on roses, and I know people have a lot of questions about growing roses. You know, if I wanted to do a live Q&A session on Stereo.com, I would always have to have a co-host. With Podbean, I can do a live by myself, and it's not a problem. So it's more versatile that way. Also, with Podbean, it allows you to have more than one host. So, for example, if I wanted to have, like, you know, a flower debate or something, and have, you know, 3 or 4 other, gardeners on to discuss, like, something or that sort of thing, I could do it, which where Stereo.com doesn't let you do that. So there's other bells and whistles, but I think for what I'm looking to do, and it'll work better. It'll give me a lot more options, and most importantly, it won't crash, which is the most important thing, because I don't want that to happen again, because that was just a mess. So, to that end, I do need some victims or volunteers to do, because I do want to test it out, because this is it's a more complicated program or software than Stereo.com. So I would like some volunteers to do, like, a small Q&A session. I mean, if I could get 5, that would be great. Even if I do like 2 or 3, that's fine. So if you guys are interested in that, if you're watching this on YouTube, leave me a comment. If you're on Instagram watching this, send me a message. If you're on Facebook, you can leave a comment or send me a message. If you guys want to email me, my email address is vintagegardenernj@icloud.com. And so I'm probably going to test it out a couple times before I do another live one, because one of the things I'm going to be testing out is, are there any times of day that are going to be a little bit more dicey in terms of, I guess, bandwidth. I want to see if there's going to be bandwidth issues. So I'm going to be testing it out multiple, on different days at different times, and that way I can make sure that the next time I schedule something, it will go a lot better. So anyway, guys, that is it. Sorry about that. That's not the way I wanted to go, but it is what it is. I should have read the contest on Stereo.com a little bit more closely, rather than just, I don't know why I thought that. But anyway, like I said, if you guys are interested in volunteering, just message me or whatnot. Just do something. Get my attention somehow. And we'll try it again, and hopefully the next time it'll go a lot more smoothly. So thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next video, which I think I'm doing a seed haul video. And yeah, see you guys later.